We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph in Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 72a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara was discussing whether Ovdei Kochavim are Kona b'Meshicha, are they Kona an object when they physically pull it. And the Gemara brought a proof from Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan says when a Ben Noach steals something, even if it's less than a Shava Pruta, he's Chayev Misa. And so the Gemara initially assumed that must prove that Meshicha is a Kinyan, because he's stealing through Meshicha. And because of the fact that Meshicha is considered to be a real Kinyan by Ovdei Kochavim, that's why there's a Chayev Misa. And the Gemara then responded on the previous Amud that maybe that is not the case. Maybe the reason why there's a Chayev Misa is actually simply because they've caused pain to the Jew that they stole from. And then the Gemara now says, according to this understanding, what does it mean that there's no obligation to return what was stolen? Initially, the assumption was there's no obligation to return it because it doesn't really have monetary value, because we're talking about something that's worth less than a Shava Pruta. But according to this understanding, that they don't even have the ability to make a Kinyan through Meshicha, so what does it mean? Lo nitan leheshavon de'eno b'toras heshavon. It just means that it's not even included in the law of returning. Rashi explains. And first, we will read these Rashis that are relevant to the previous Amud. V'lo nitan leheshav, and again, there's no obligation to return it. V'lo mechayev la'adur l'ha Yisrael. He doesn't have to return it to this Jew, d'ha mochel aleh, because it's worth so little that he's mochel, he forgives. That's the initial understanding. Amai nerag, then the Gemara said on the previous Amud, why would he be killed if there's no kinyan? Halo kanyo lahach gezela, there was no kinyan on what he stole. V'chol hechad di'isa shel Yisrael, wherever it is, it actually still belongs to the Yisrael. Umeshani hayde nerag misham tzari di Yisrael, and then the Gemara answered, the reason why he's killed is because of the pain caused to the Jew. And Rashi continues, Umay lo nitan leheshavan, and according to that, what does it mean lo nitan leheshavan? Halo shayich beheshavan. The Gemara is really like asking a question. It's not even shayich to return it. The kaven dovid kochavim lo kanya, because if we're now saying the ovid kochavim doesn't acquire because there's no kinyan meshicha by an ovid kochavim, to Yisrael it belongs to the Yisrael. So what does it mean lo nitan leheshavan according to this answer? And the Gemara then said, Eino b'toras heshavan. It's not included in the law of heshavan, of returning. Kilomar hachinami kamar, meaning to say that's exactly what we're saying. Eina b'toras shum gezela. It's not under the law of any kind of stealing. The ovid kochavim techol hechadiisa demari. It's not really considered stolen by the ovid kochavim, because wherever it is, it really belongs to the original owner. And Rashi notes, according to this view, v'hu adin l'shava pruta. The same would be true by a shava pruta. It doesn't matter that he stole less than a shava pruta. Even if he stole something that was worth a pruta or more than a pruta, it still would not be b'toras heshavan, because really there is no kinyan. The only reason why Rabbi Yochanan speaks about less than a Shava Pruta is just to teach us that there is a Chiyav Misa in this situation. And the Gemara continues and asks, if so, look at the end of the statement of Rabbi Yochanan. It said, let's say his friend comes, that's the friend of the Ovid Kochavim, comes and takes it from him, from that first Ovid Kochavim who stole it. So he also is killed over it. And so the Gemara says, now I understand you explained the first part of the statement, Mishum Detzir Eli Yisrael, because he caused pain to the Jew. But if we're saying an Ovid Kochavim doesn't have a kinyan through Mashiach, and in this situation he didn't take it away from the Jew, he took it away from the Ovid Kochavim, who was the first thief. So what did he do? Why is he nerag? Kona, rather, don't we see that Meshicha by an Ovid Kochavim is Kona? And the Gemara says, Shma Mina, indeed we see that that is the case. And Rashi explains, Shma Mina Meshicha Kona, do we see from here that Meshicha is Kona? Hilkach Kanya Kama, therefore the first person acquired, V'hadr Kanya Hai, and now this person acquires V'nerag al Shagazal, and he's being killed because he stole. V'lo nitan leheshavon dereisha, and then according to this, we're going to go back to our first understanding, when it said V'lo nitan leheshavon, that it's not to be returned, in the beginning of the statement, Dafka Pachos Mishava Pruta, that's talking specifically when it's less than a pruta. The Yisrael mochel, because the Yisrael is mochel, he forgives. V'lo mechayev ovid kochavim lahadur, and therefore the ovid kochavim is not obligated to return it. And the Gemara continues, Hahu Gavra Diamarle Lachavre, there was a person who said to his friend, Imizavinin Allah, Laha if I sell this land, Lach Mizavinin Allah, I'm going to sell it to you. Azal Zavna Linish Achrina, then he went ahead and he sold it to somebody else. Amar Rav Yosef says, Kana Kama, the first person acquires, because that was the deal. He said, if I sell it, it's going to be to you. Amar le Abaya said to him, he said to Rav Yosef, Holo Pasak, but they didn't fix a price. Don't you have to fix a price in order for that kind of a kinyan to work? And the Gemara continues, where can I show you that this is the case, that you have to fix the price? Where can I prove to you that anytime the price is not fixed, that it's not a good kinyan? It's not, because we learned in our Mishnah, if he sells his wine relying to an Oved Kochavim. Pasak ad shalom madad, if they fix the price, he fixes the price before measuring it out. So dam of mutar, and then we say the money is permitted, because then we say the kinyan works, because he fixed the price. But madad ad shalom pasak, but if he measures it out before he fixes the price, so there he doesn't really rely on it, because the price might be too high in the end. So dam of asurin, so over there we say that the money that is paid is going to be forbidden, because there is no acquisition in that situation. And so the Mishnah seems to be indicating you need to fix a price, and therefore Abai argues that should be true in this case as well. And the Gemara continues, my havela, so what's the conclusion over here? Is Rav Yosef correct? Is Abai correct? The Gemara says, my havela, what do you mean what's the conclusion? We just said that the Mishnah makes it clear that Abai is correct. The Gemara says not necessarily. Maybe when it comes to yayin nesach, there are certain stringencies, and therefore maybe the halach is different when it comes to yayin nesach. And Rashi explains, Loch mizavinin Allah, I'm going to sell it to you if I do sell it. The kanu minei bekinyan. The case over here was that they made a kinyan to that effect, that if I ever sell it, it's going to be to you. And then Abaye asked, V'halo pasak, but they didn't fix a price. V'halo pasak rishon damim, he didn't fix a price that first one. Meaning when that first person made that deal, that if you're going to sell it, it's going to be to me, they never fixed a price. V'lo samcha daite a kinyan, and therefore he didn't rely on the kinyan. The savram yirtza lachzor yirbo la bedamim, because he just thinks to himself, if this guy wants to retract, he'll just increase the price. And then Abaye brought the proof from our Mishnah, Dama Vasurin, that if they don't fix the price, then we say that the money is going to be prohibited. Alma lo kanya Meshicha. You see that in that situation where they did not fix the price, so the Meshicha doesn't create a kinyan. Mishum de lo pasuk, because the price wasn't fixed. Kodem lachein, before that. Hilkach kinyanami lo mahani. Therefore the kinyan also will not be effective. And the Gemara then said, my havi Allah kedamran. The Gemara first asked, what is the conclusion? What do you mean, what's the conclusion? It's like we just said, Kama b'loshen bai. The first my havela is a question. Uvasra b'loshen tema. And then the later my havela is saying, of course, we already answered the question. And the Gemara says that not necessarily. Dilma mehacha lo pashtinon lakinyan dialma. Maybe we can't learn out from our Mishnah by yayin nesach to other kinyanim. V'hacha misham chumra di yayin nesach here, because yayin nesach is so strict. Shani, it's different. Achmiru rabbanan lameimar. The rabbanan are strict, and they say the lokanya meshicha below pisak. They'll say that meshicha will not create an acquisition without fixing the price. That's a stringency over here by yayin nesach. Avol bi'al makani, but it could be that the kinyan will be effective in other situations. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come in here the following proof with regards to what Abaye said, that you need to fix the price in order for the kinyan to go through. The Amar Ravidi bar Ravin, because Ravidi bar Ravin said, Uvda hava bei Rav Chisda, there was an incident by Rav Chisda, for Rav Chisda bei Rav Huna, and Rav Chisda brought it before Rav Huna, before the yeshiva of Rav Huna. Upashte mehod detanya, and they answered the question from the following brisa. The brisa says, Moshe chamarav upoalov, if his donkey drivers and his workers, they do a meshicha, they pull the item, v'chnisan l'soch beiso, they bring it into his house, bein pasak ad shelo madad, whether they fix the price before measuring, uvein madad ad shelo pasak, or whether he measures before fixing the price, lo kanet is not a kinyan, ushnein yecholen lachzor behen, and both of them are able to retract. Pirkon v'chnisan l'soch beiso, now if they took the items and they took them off of the animal and he brought it into his house, then we make a distinction. Pasak ad shelo madad, if he fixed the price before measuring, ein shnein yecholen lachzor behen, they're both not able to retract, the kinyan does go through. Madad ad shelo pasak, but if he measures before he fixes the price, shnein yecholen lachzor behen, they're both able to retract, and therefore you see in this brisa, like Abaya, that we do make such a distinction. And Rashi explains, Mashach Heimenu Chamorav Upoalav, if he does the Meshicha, the donkey drivers, the workers, Harei Shahaya Mevi Chamorav to Unin Peiros, let's say his donkeys are bringing a bunch of produce. Upoalav Nosim Bekase, for his workers are carrying it on their shoulders. Umashcha Chaveiro Mimenu, and his friend, he pulls it from him. Vechnisan L'soch Beis, so he brings it into his house. Lav Meshicha, that is not considered a Meshicha, it's not a kinyan. She'ein Meshicha Kona Bivnei Adam, because Meshicha doesn't work by people. Upeiros calls man Shein Olayu, and the produce, as long as it's upon them, lo kana, it's not going to be a kinyan. And Rashi continues, Bein pasak damim acharei, whether they fixed a price after. And we should note over here that Rashi is understanding the brisa, that again the donkey drivers or the workers, he's pulling them into the house with the produce upon them. And as Rashi just said before, that's not considered a meshicha. And so therefore Rashi understands Bein pasak ad shelo madad means that's not considered a meshicha. So fixing the price afterward is not going to do anything. And then the brisa continues, ad shelo pasak. Let's say they measured before they fixed the price. Kilomar, Rashi understands this to mean, it's as if to say, Kol Zman Shelo Pasak. The brisa simply means, as long as a price was not fixed, Yachol Mocher Lachzor Bo, the Mocher is able to retract, De Beiso Lo Adifa Mi Meshicha, because the house is no better than Meshicha, or Meshicha Gufa Lo Kanya, the Meshicha itself is not a real Meshicha, as Rashi just said above. And so the first part of the brisa is basically saying, if you do a Meshicha that's not a Meshicha, the bringing it into the house is also nothing, again, because the produce is still on the donkey drivers, it's still on the workers, and so therefore, without fixing a price, it is not going to be effective. Ela imkain pasak. It's only effective if he fixes the price. But Rashi notes, avol madad u pasak. Let's say he measures and fixes the price. O pasak u madad. Let's say he fixes the price and measures kanyole beso. Then actually his house would create an acquisition according to Rashi. V'lo by meshicha, and meshicha would not be needed. And then the brisa went on to say, parkan v'chnisan l'soch beso. If he unloads and brings it into his house, so then the brisa made a distinction. The brisa said, pasak ad shalom madad. If he fixes the price without measuring, ein shneim yechol lachzor bo, they cannot retract. The afagav de lo madad, even though there was no measuring, kevon de pasak kanyele reshuso b'meshicha. Since they fixed the price, so his reshus is kona b'meshicha. Madad ad shalo pasak shneim yechol lachzor bo. If he measures without fixing the price, they both can retract. Calls man shalo pasak, as long as the price wasn't fixed. The medida lo mahanya midi, because the measuring doesn't help. Or reshuso lo kanya ad diyifsok, and his reshus will not be kona until the price is fixed. Alma meshicha below pisuk lo kanya. The point over here is you see that meshicha without the fixing of the price is not a good kinyan. Again, it seems to be like abaya. And we will note that the Mesoras Hashas has a slightly different girsa in this Rashi. It's Kanya le Reshuso kim Meshicha. That again, even though he didn't measure, since he fixed a price, his Reshus is Kona, not with Meshicha, but rather just like Meshicha. And the Gemara continues, there was a person who said to his friend, if I sell this land, I'm going to sell it to you for 100 zuz. And then he went ahead and he sold it to somebody else, but not for 100 zuz, rather for 120 zuz. Amar Rav Kahana says, Kana Kama, the first person, he's the one that acquires the land. Because again, the deal was, if I sell it to somebody, it's going to be sold to you. Maskeflo Rav Yaakov min Nahar Pakod, Rav Yaakov from Nahar Pakod, he asked on this, Hai Zuze Ansu, in this case, that extra money, the fact that this purchaser was willing to give 120, that essentially forced him to sell. This was not sold willingly, so to speak. If the person's going to offer him so much money, of course he's going to sell, and therefore it is not that first person who acquires, but rather the person who paid the 120. And the Gemara says, V'hilchasa ka Rav Yaakov min Nahar Pakod. The halach is like Rav Yaakov from Nahar Pakod. And Rashi explains, Kana Kama, again, according to Rav Kahana, it's the first person who acquires the Pasak v'Kanu Minei, because they fixed the price and they made a kinyan, and therefore he acquires. But then Rav Yaakov from Nahar Pakod said, Zuze Ansu, that in this case the money forced him. Zesh Anasan Lo Mea V'Esrin, the person who gave him 120, Anso L'Mochri, he forced him to sell. V'Chol Kama D'Lo Yahav V'Lei Kuli Hai Lo Ave B'Dai T'Lizvun. If somebody wasn't going to give him that much money, he wouldn't have sold it. V'iyu Imezavina No Le B'Shavye Kamarle. He just meant that if I sell it at value, then it's going to be to you. This person didn't sell it willingly. He essentially sold it against his will. And the Gemara continues with another case. If the seller says to the buyer, I'll sell it to you according to the way that it's evaluated by three people, those three individuals will give us a price and we'll follow that price. If you use this language of Kideshaymi Betlasa, even if 2 out of 3 give a particular price, you follow that price. Kida'amri Betlasa, but if the way it's phrased is as 3 people say, whatever they say the price is, so then you need to have all 3. Kida'amri Betlasa, it has to be that all 3 of them say it's that price. Kedeshaymi bi'arba, let's say he says I'm going to sell it to you according to the evaluation of 4 people. So then ad amri bi'arba, then you need to have, even though he said kedeshaymi, it needs to be all 4, because once he's saying 4 people, he's leaving the category of a bezdin of a court, and he really means to say that all 4 have to say this price. And the Gemara says v'kol shekein hechadamar le keda'amri bi'arba. Certainly if he says keda'amri bi'arba, then for sure, just like keda'amri betlasa means all 3, certainly keda'amri bi'arba means all 4. Amar le kedeshaymi betlasa. So let's say he says that I'll sell it to you according to the evaluation of 3 people. V'yasu tlasa v'shamu, and 3 people come and they do evaluate, they give a price. V'yamar le'idach, and then the other one says, the buyer says, leisu tlasa achrini dekim lutfei, I want to bring 3 other people, they're more experts. Amar Papa says, Dino Hudamake, if he is the law is on his side, that he can hold back. He can say, bring these three other people who are more proficient. We don't have to listen to the first three. Ma'askevlo Ravuna Breder of Yoshua. Ravuna Breder of Yoshua asked on this, Mimai Dahani Kim Lutzvei, but how do you know that the second group of three, that they're more proficient? Dil Mahani Kim Lutzvei, maybe the first three are more proficient. And the Gemara comments, V'hilchasok Ravuna Breder of Yoshua. The halakha is like Ravuna Breder of Yoshua. You can't really know that the second group is more proficient than the first. And Rashi explains, Zamar le kedeshaymi b'tzlosov, he says to him, according to the way three evaluate, mizavinin Allah nihilach, that's how I'll sell it to you. Came in the naka lishna deshuma, since he's using a language of evaluation. V'naka tzlosa shein bezin, and he's talking about three people, which is generally a court. Stam letoras dayon and nachas, you can assume that he wants it to be like judges, like a court. V'afilu tremi go tzlosa, even if it's 2 out of 3, shamano, so they can evaluate. V'im shlishi cholok al hashnayim mazlinan basaruba. If the third person argues with the other two, we follow the majority. Keda amri beit tzlosa, but if he says like three people say, Lashon Zeh La B'Toras Dayonin Nochas V'La Amiras Shloshton Iskavin. There he's not talking about judges. He means to say that all three need to say that price. Kedeshaymi Bi'arbo, if he says like 4 evaluate, Kevin Nochas L'Deos Laharbos Deos Yoser Mechtei Bezin, since he wants more opinions than a court, V'adai Lav L'Toras Dayonin Nochas, he's not thinking of them as judges in a court. V'lo Azlin and Basaruba, we don't follow majority. Adamrin and Kula, they all have to say the price. The Cholk and Mayahanu Le'Deos, because if they're already arguing, what does it help to have this many opinions? And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Notal as hamashbech, if he takes the funnel, umodad l'soch tzluchiso shel ovid kochavim, and he measures the wine into the jug of the ovid kochavim, of the idolater, v'chazer umodad l'soch tzluchiso shel Yisrael, and then he goes ahead and he measures into the jug of a Jew, again through the same funnel. Im yesh bo ikvas yain, if there's a remnant of wine on the funnel, so then aser will be forbidden. Hamara mikli al kli, if he pours from one vessel to another vessel, as she'ira mimenu mutter, the vessel which he's pouring from is permitted, as she'ira l'socho aser, and the one that he's pouring into is forbidden. And Rashi explains, Ashbech milmala pivrachov milmata neck of kotzer. He's describing a funnel over here. Umoshivano so alpit tzluchis shalochin, and what they would do is they would put the funnel over the tzluchis, over the flask or the jug of the purchaser, Shapi Ansar, where the opening was very narrow, Vishovchen Hayayin Min Hamida L'soch, when they would pour the wine from the measuring utensil through the funnel into the vessel of the buyer, V'hu Yored L'soch Hatzluchis, and that's how the wine would go into the flask or the jug. Im Yeshbo B'shule Hamashbech, now if on the bottom of the funnel there's Ikvas Yayin, there's remnants of wine, Mokom Shemesakeves Sham Tipas Yayin, areas where there are drops of wine, so then when you're going to pour it through into the Jew's vessel, it's going to be forbidden. Because you have there some remnant of the wine that was measured for the Ovid Kochavim and poured through the funnel into the vessel of the Ovid Kochavim. That remnant of the wine is usher. Now when you pour more wine through that funnel, that wine will become forbidden. The Gemara will explain that remnant of wine that's on the funnel, how did that become usher in the first place? And Rashi continues, Hama'ora mikli al kli, if somebody pours from one vessel to another vessel, as she'ira mimenu mutter, the vessel which is being poured from is permitted. The Gemara is going to explain that here we're talking where an ovid kochavim is pouring the wine. Ve'itzrich la'ashminan as she'ira l'socho aser misham kocho, and it's teaching us that the vessel which it's poured into, that's aser because it's coming from the force of the ovid kochavim. Vo'elyon mutter, but the upper vessel remains mutter, de lo gazer rabbanan kocho lemeser ahud gavoy, because the Rabbanan do not say that there's a gezerah when it's coming from his force to say that is usher. Again, it's only going to be usher the vessel which it's poured into. And the Gemara says, Tanan Hasam, we learned in a mission over there in Meseches Taharos Hanitzok v'Akatafris. If you have a stream or you have water that's running down an incline, umashka tofach, or you have a surface that becomes moist, eino chibor lo l'tumah v'lo l'tahara. That's not considered to be a connection, not for purposes of tumah, impurity, and not for purposes of tahara, purity. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Ha'ashboren, a pond, chibor l'tumah v'letahara. That is considered to be a chibor. It's considered to be an attachment, a connection when it comes to tumah and tahara. And Rashi explains, Hanitzo kiluach tzinor habo milmalo lamata. You have a stream that's coming coming from above to below, bizkifetz, like going straight down, kemarziv shel gagin, like it's coming off the gutters of a roof, and katafris, it could be coming down an incline, mayim haboin milmalo lamata derech madron, through some kind of slant, shel tel gavoa zakuf, again you have some kind of mound, it's coming down in that fashion, and finally umashka tofach, you have liquid that made a surface moist, ve'ein bo tofach al menas lahatviach, now it's not so moist that it can make another surface moist. Shem tafach ben biyado lo yala b'mashka sheyuchel lahatviach davar acher, if he would touch it with his hand, he wouldn't be able to touch another surface and make that wet, and so you have these three kinds of situations, again, nitza, katafris, and mashka tofach, and the Mishnah said, Eino chibur lo l'tumah, it's not a connection as far as tumah is concerned, meaning imashkin telushin hein, let's say you have water here that's detached, v'naga tamei betachton, and a person who's tamei, he touches the lower part of the water, let's say in the case where there's a stream of water coming from above, so somebody who's tamei, he touches the water at the bottom, so ha'elyon tar, so the water at the top is going to be pure. V'chein le'inyan mashka tofach, and the same is true, again, if you have like a surface which is moist, afilu b'makom cholak, that could be even in an area that's not in any kind of slant, mashka mikan, umikan, you have liquid here and here, umashka tofach b'emsen, you have that moisture in the middle, v'naga tamei b'mashka, and so the person who's tamei, he touches that surface area which is moist, mashkan shemikan, umikan, the liquid on both sides of that surface, tahorin, are going to be pure, v'afa pisha mechubaron lo, even though they're attached to that particular surface, so you have the liquid on the sides, and you have that area, that surface in the middle, which is a little bit wet, that's not going to create that connection. And again, the same thing when you have a stream of water, you touch that which is below, it's not going to make that which is above tamei. That's what we mean when we say eino chibur in terms of tumah. And then velo letahara, then it's also not considered to be attached in terms of purity. It means as follows: gemamis she'ein bar boim salt. Let's say you have a little pool of water, it's not 40 saw. V'nitzok o katafris o mashke tofach mechaber legemamis zu mikva shalim. And in this way, through a stream, through some kind of water that's coming down an incline, through some kind of moist surface, it's attaching the small amount of water to a full mikvah. Eino chibur, that is not considered an attachment. V'atovel b'gemamis lo also lo tefillah. If somebody would immerse in that pool of water, that would not be a good immersion in terms of purifying himself. And hoashborin is a pond, bikua eretz melechosh, and is bakov nikvusham mayim. It's a gathering of water there. So then chibur l'tumah vilatara, that actually would be considered a connection for both tumah and tahara. And Rashi here is referring to a crack in the ground which fills with water, and again, that is considered to be a connection. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Huna says, Nitzok v'katafris u'mashke tofach, the same types of cases that were listed in the Mishnah in Taharos, Nitzok, katafris, mashke tofach, chibur le'inyan yain nesach, they are considered an attachment in terms of the halachas of yain nesach. And Rashi explains, Liyein nesach shamaora mikli kosher liyein nesach. Let's say a person is going to pour from a kosher vessel to yayin nesach. So now you have a stream coming down to the yayin nesach. Nesar af masha beklio elyon derech nitzok. Through that nitzok, what's in the upper vessel is going to be forbidden. And therefore, Rav Huna is saying, when it comes to yayin nesach, we are more strict than when it comes to what we were dealing with tum and tahara in the Mishnah in Taharos. And the Gemara says, Amar le Rav Nachman le Rav Huna. Rav Nachman said to Rav Huna, Menolocha. From where do you know this idea that we are strict when it comes to yayin nesach? Ileima miditanan. If you're going to say it's from the Mishnah that we just quoted above, Hanitzok v'akatafris u'mashke tofach eino chibur lo l'tumah v'lo l'tara. You'll say that the Mishnah is saying it's not an attachment for tumah and tahara, and we can infer l'tumah l'tara hu lo have a chibur. It's not a chibur for tumah and tahara. Ha'le'inyan yayin nesach have a chibur. But when it comes to yayin nesach, it is considered to be an attachment. You're going to try to make that inference from that Mishnah in Taharos. But the Gemara says, if that's the case, Amos, if you're going to make an inference from the Mishnah in Taharos to yayin nesach, let's look at the end of that Mishnah. Hashborin, when it comes to a pond, the chibur l'tumah l'tara, that's an attachment when it comes to tumah and tahara. L'tumah l'tara, hu da have a chibur. Are you going to say the reverse inference for tumah and tahara, that's considered attached? Hal inyan yayin nesach lo have a chibur, but it's not considered when it comes to yayin nesach, it's not considered a chibur. That, of course, would not make any sense. So elamei hal lekol l'mashma mina. So rather, you can't see anything from that Mishnah. It cannot be that the Mishnah in Taharos is the source for Rav Huna's halacha in terms of yayin nesach. And the Gemara continues to now, and we learn in our Mishnah. Nadal es hamashbech, he takes the funnel, umadad lesoch tzluchiso shel oved kochavim, he measures into the flask of the oved kochavim, v'chazer umadad lesoch tzluchiso shel Yisrael, then he goes ahead and he measures into the flask of the Jew, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Beis Amud Beis.